Hi guys, welcome to the Watch Hobbyist channel with me, Wayne, and today we're going to look at the Rolex Daytona. So I've actually got here the steel one, and I've also got a gold one on a rubber strap. Now, the Daytona is obviously a real hype watch. It's a watch that if you get your name down on a list and you get offered the opportunity to make the most of that and actually buy one at some point in your entire lifetime, then you take that opportunity. Very few people would actively decline the opportunity unless they had reasons, for insufficient funds or whatever, things like that. This is a watch that will absolutely guarantee to sell 100 times over if the store get one in. And unfortunately, because the demand is so great and the supply is so limited, it's become a watch that's basically impossible to buy. You do hear stories of people that buy several of them, but a lot of that's being cracked down on. Warranty cards are being held back, things like that, so that people can't just flip them straight onto the grey market. It's a watch that it just ends up, that's all people talk about with it. They don't talk about the actual watch. So that's why today I thought it'd be nice to have a look at the Rolex Daytona. I have these two here, obviously, so therefore it gives a good sort of broad spectrum of the Daytona range, because when people talk about the hard to get Daytonas, it's always the steel model. It's not the steel model with gold, it's not the gold models themselves, although there are a couple of models, this one included, that are a bit harder to get hold of now. So you quite often see on forums new to watches have been looking for a Daytona, and they go in and they're absolutely amazed that they saw a gold Daytona in a window, but actually that's really common. You see those everywhere. It's the steel ones that are incredibly hard to get, and you will never see in a window unless it's a grey dealer, because they just don't even hit the windows. They're already on waiting lists and they will go straight to the person at the top of that waiting list. So the watch itself though, this one especially, is a pretty special watch. It deserves its demand. It really does. It's a watch that has a fantastic movement inside, a fantastically robust movement. It's not a movement that you're going to see on show. It's got a solid case back, and the reason for that is because if you've ever seen the movement it's inside here, it's actually not that pretty, but that's not really the point anyway. The point is that it's accurate, that it's robust, and that it's easy to work on for any watchmaker that can work on it. So generally that's going to be Rolex themselves, but things like screws are large. You have sort of coloured wheels and things like that going on. It's quite an unusual movement, to be honest, but it's only like any other Rolex movement. They all have like the similar sort of scenarios going on with the parachrome hairspring and everything, to aid with anti-magnetism and things like that. But it's a 70 or so hour power reserve, which for me, first of all, is the main benefit, because this is the type of watch that you could wear Monday to Friday, take it off for the weekend when you wear something different, and then put it back on Monday and it will still be running. You don't have to reset the time or anything like that. There's no date to the Daytona, and that for me is a little bit of a bad thing. I do like watches that have a date more than watches that don't have a date. However, the Daytona has never had a date and therefore probably never will, and as a result of that I kind of forgive it. But it's so simple that even if you do let the power reserve run down, then because there's no date involved, you just simply wind it up a little bit, pull the crown out, set the time, boom, done, you're ready to go. It's a really easy watch to live with. There's no high maintenance going on here. It's very, very easy to sort of own and live with, and its dimensions are also something I'm going to talk about soon, but it's just the whole way the watch wears and the whole way the watch feels and looks. It's just superb. There are not many watches that I like as much as the Rolex Daytona. Now, there are differences between the gold one and the steel one in terms of dimensions, which I'll show you soon. But one thing I want to talk about is that if you've seen my other videos, around about 2015, I ended up with the Rolex Daytona ceramic, the steel one. It was probably the first one in the UK. It was a complete fluke that I ended up with it, and I actually ended up selling it. First of all, I sold it because I was hoping to end up with the white one and I got the black one, and I thought, well, I've got a black one pretty quick, so I'm sure I won't be waiting too long for a white one. Well, that was a mistake, because I don't think I'll ever see a white one, well, certainly not for a long time anyway. They are unbelievably hard to get hold of. Secondly, the black one, and I mean this as no disrespect to Tag Heuer, but it reminded me of a Tag Heuer, and it was an £8,000 watch, and you don't generally spend £8,000 on a Tag Heuer, and that's how it reminded me. But it also, because it had the black ceramic, there's something that goes on here. So the black ceramic, the black dial, and the black subdials all made this watch unbelievably difficult to read. Whereas the steel one that you see here with the steel bezel, this I can read, and I think it must be to do with the bezel. It must be to do with the contrast that's shown. I mean, sometimes I do struggle a bit with the hour hand, I will admit, but the minute hand is always dead easy to see. But I find this particular model easier to read than the current ceramic black model. I don't know why. I think, like I say, it's to do with the contrast, but I do find it easier to read, and that's why I have this one. Now, this one in particular is quite an unusual model. It's quite rare in itself. You'll always, when you look for a Rolex, you'll always find people trying to talk up their watch and say, oh, it's rare for this reason or whatever. None of them are actually rare. They're just, there's a lot of these watches out there, I'm sure. But basically in 2014, after around about 14 years of this particular model, they slightly changed it. And this is a 2014, and what they did was they put the lume basically it went from a green to like an aqua that they have. So you got this chromalite lume all of a sudden, and for me that was a big plus, because I really like the colour of the chromalite, whereas the green lume of old, I don't think it suits a lot of watches. I think it looks a bit out of place. And, the chromalite has been around for so long that I thought, I was surprised that even in 2013 you were still able to get a Daytona that had the green luminescence. And the luminescence is applied to the little batons around the dial. It's applied to the hour hand and the minute hand. And therefore, there's quite a lot of lume going on, basically, even though it doesn't look like it, there is. So when it was green, I didn't really like it, but then when they changed it to chromalite, that was my, that was a real big boon for me, because I really, really like this chromalite lume. I thought it looks really, really good. So that's the first thing with this watch. The other thing is some of them have this APH error dial, and this one actually does. Now, whether this actually adds any value, I've no idea, but I've noticed it seems to be becoming a thing of late, where people are advertising them with the APH dial. And basically what it is this is a Rolex Cosmograph, it's called, Cosmograph Daytona. And Cosmograph, at the end of the word Cosmograph, has the R and the A before the PH. And on some of the watches, some of the Daytonas, there's a gap. There's a space that shouldn't really be there. So if you look at it through a loupe, or if you look at it close up with your eyes, it looks like Cosmograph is separated between the R and the A. And that is an APH error dial. This watch has that. Like I say, no idea if it makes any difference to the value. It probably won't make the value go down amazingly, even though it's an error. It'll probably make it go up if it does. But I just wanted to show you that, because whenever you buy something like a Rolex Daytona, you always need to look for these little nuances, because it's those that can make the difference between, like when you look at these auctions of sort of vintage watches, look at the little things that are advertised, and you soon see how the slightest difference that shouldn't even be there, it's probably an error in the manufacturing process, makes all the difference to a watch being worth such and such an amount to such and such a huge amount. And that's what goes on in auctions. For example, there's like Patrizzi dials where it's a phenomenon where like the paint fails and turns like a yellowy browny colour around the subdials on some of the watches, and suddenly you've got a Patrizzi dial, and that's worth an absolute fortune, because people that collect them absolutely love them. So you always have to look out for these things, and that's why I just wanted to point out what's on here. Now, if I place this watch down, I'm going to show you the gold one. So this is Well, it's actually not a current model, but I'll tell you why. You'll probably think it is if you know anything about Daytonas, but I will tell you why it's not a current model. This is the 11615. I think that's the right reference. The 11615 preceded what I think is the 11618 or the 11619. I always forget. And basically, the 11615 came with a leather strap. Now, I bought this watch used, I didn't buy it brand new. And when I bought it, it didn't come with a leather strap. It came with a rubber B strap. But the rubber B happens to look very much like the Oyster Flex strap that you do get on the latest model. Now, the thing that amazes me is people ask me about the Oyster Flex strap, and I tell them it's not an Oyster Flex strap, and they pretty much argue with me that it is. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's a rubber B strap. In terms of looks, they are incredibly similar. The Oyster Flex actually has some metal within the rubber itself that keeps the form of the strap more rounded, and it also has like some little bellows on the back, which I guess are for sweat, and they sort of would help with alleviate sort of any extra sweat on the wrist. But let me tell you now that I have tried the Oyster Flex and I'm not a massive fan of it. However, this rubber B strap is absolutely brilliant. And as far as I'm aware, the rubber B strap came out before the Oyster Flex anyway. I think, it was seen that rubber straps weren't really a thing in premium watches, and when they did become so, with things like rubber B, I'm sure, Rolex saw that sort of pattern, and that's where the Oyster Flex came from. But it's actually a fantastic strap. However, it is quite unusual when you fit it. So first of all, you've got to be pretty brave. I had done it before on a Patek Philippe with a rubber strap, so it wasn't as alien to me as it would be someone that hadn't. But basically, you are buying a several £100 strap. So this was around, it was over £200. And then you're taking a pair of scissors to it until it's cut down to size, and then you can fit the watch to your wrist. So there's an easy way to do that. You basically just do it as little as possible each time and just keep trying it. Cut it, try it, cut it, try it, and then you aren't going to risk actually sort of costing yourself the price of another new strap if you mess up. The other thing as well is with the rubber B, you actually have to make another cut, which is an incision there, which means that it will actually go onto the Rolex clasp. So this is the original Rolex clasp that would have come with the leather strap, but it actually then fits onto the rubber strap really nicely as well. And it took me, didn't take me that long to fit it, just took a little bit of time to fine tune it more than anything, and I've got a fit that I'm really, really happy with. Now, one thing that's very different obviously with the precious metal Daytonas, and indeed any precious metal watch versus a steel watch, is the weight. I've not got scales here, but I would imagine that this watch, even on a rubber strap with the rose gold clasp, with the rose gold case, and then with the rose gold dial as well, all these things add up to a weight that is probably more than the steel watch on a bracelet. It does have a heft. However, what's really nice is it's very nicely balanced. It doesn't feel like it's going to flop around all the time, wears really, really comfortably. And for a gold watch, I'd say this is probably my favourite solid gold watch that I've had. I've not had many, but this catches attention like you wouldn't believe. So you do have to be aware of that. This is the watch equivalent of driving around in a Ferrari. If you wear this, people will ask you about it. Now, I'm not usually a fan of that, but I tend to only wear it to occasions where if that's going to happen, I'm not going to feel like my life or watch itself is at risk. So I only wear it to certain places anyway. I'm not the type of person that would wear this day in, day out every day, because I don't really have the job that allows me to do that, and I don't really have a want or a need for that scenario. I just enjoy owning watches, and when I had the opportunity to buy this watch, I couldn't turn it away. I just had to try a gold Daytona. It was something that I hadn't had before. The dial on this one is one of a number that can be chosen, but I really like this dial because it gives me the best contrast and it allows me to read the time incredibly easily. We have these luminescent batons around the dial which have like a black border to them. There's a gold Rolex crown at the top. It's really easy to read, and I think that I'd say it looks classy, I'd say it looks elegant. Some people wouldn't agree with that, I'm sure, but for me, some of the Daytonas where you get like diamond dials and things like that, I think that's pushing it a bit in terms of class and elegance, whereas this one I actually feel does sort of portray a really classy look to it. For a solid gold watch, it doesn't look really crass or completely ridiculous. I think it looks really nice, and I think that the gold sort of text within the ceramic bezel looks really good as well. It still has the same movement as the steel one, so the 70 or so hour power reserve. It still has the screw down pushers, so 100 meters water resistance as well on both these watches. The screw down crown, which is actually a trip lock crown, so that has seals there, so if by mistake you left the crown unscrewed, theoretically there's still some resistance there to water because it has sort of rubber seals around there, but obviously you don't want to go doing that. You want to always have the crown screwed in. There is another difference between these two watches though, which isn't actually apparent until you take some calipers to it. So I'm just going to show you, and it's only a very slight difference, but there's a difference. If I just take this caliper here and we try and get a diameter, now I'm going to put one end at the pusher and one end at about 70 on the tachometer. We get around about 39 millimeters there. Okay, so that's what we get. If we then look at the length of the watch, then we get 46, and if we look at the height of the watch, we get just around about 12.1, something like that. Okay, so that's the steel one. That's the dimensions of the steel. In terms of the case, I'm not looking at anything else. And then, if we do the same on this one, so I'm going to put one at the crown there, the pusher, one at 70. I now seem to get a larger reading, which is around about 41 millimeters. So there's around about a 2 millimeter diameter difference. And then if we look at the length of the watch, then we get 47.4 or so. So going on for around about 1 to 1.5 millimeters longer. Height wise, let's see. Height-wise, very similar, almost identical, so that's not really too much of a difference. But that's something that is a little bit unknown, is that the precious metal watches are ever so slightly different in their dimensions. Now, the other thing I want to show you as well is, if you look, hopefully we can get it where you can see, if you look at the side-on scenario of the case, you'll see that actually the profile of the case is different. So the steel one actually has just like basically a very flat bottom to it, with a tonneau shape, whereas the gold one, if you look at the area of the lugs, so if you look sort of here, it has much more of a deep angle to this area, which then sort of shoots up and then goes to the case. This one just doesn't have that at all. It just has a much flatter appearance when it reaches the end link and it reaches the bracelet. So that's another difference between the two. But overall, the dimensions are more or less the same. But if you ask me to choose between these two, it would be very difficult. And the reason is because they're both very different watches. This is gold and a lot more flash. It's a little bit bigger, as we've seen, and it has the rubber strap, so it's more sporty in appearance and not going to be as easy to wear at something like an important meal or an important event or whatever. It would wear fine. Obviously, it doesn't really matter, but at the same time, you sometimes expect to see leather straps or bracelets at those types of things, and that's where this one is probably I'd say a bit more versatile. It's also lighter. I can definitely feel a weight difference when I lift this watch up versus the other. And obviously it ends up down to personal preference in the end. They both have the same movement. This is a lot cheaper theoretically, but actually if you were to go in search of the current ceramic steel model, you start to get to a big percentage of the gold model prices, which I think is silly. I think it's got to the point where it really is silly now. There's a reason why the Daytona steel ceramic has a retail price of what it does, and that's because that's its price point in the market, and it's only this secondary market that's pulling these prices up and making people want to pay more or less the same as what you could for certain gold models. In fact, it's even more than all the two-tone models on the grey market for one of these ceramic Daytonas. So obviously, if you want the watch, that's the way to get it straight away. Otherwise, you put your name down and you will wait a long time. There are other ways apparently of getting the watches. Certain dealers are doing the type of thing where, oh well, if you come in, sir, and you buy this watch, then maybe we could get you our next Daytona. That's a way that some dealers are doing things, and a dealer is a dealer. They're going to make money, so of course it makes sense if they can sell 2 or 3 watches for somebody to buy the Daytona, then that makes a lot of sense to them. So of course it's a feasible business trick, if you like, and that's fine. But all I'm getting at is that the prices on the grey market are, to me, above what the watch is worth. And therefore, if you're watching this thinking, should I buy a Daytona or not? Maybe have a look towards sort of second-hand watches, see what's out there, see what suits you, because I feel that there's more character in the steel model with the steel bezel than there ever will be with a more clinical ceramic bezel. Ceramic is very much now, it's of the moment, it's something that's here to stay, and you're not going to see as many steel bezels going on or aluminium bezels anymore, so it's nice sometimes to have something that bit different as well. So that's a look at the Rolex Daytona. I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you have, then please make sure you give me a thumbs up. Please make sure you also subscribe to the channel, and if you could, please also hit the bell icon. It's really good if you do that, because then you'll know when I'm going to bring more videos out. And the other thing as well is, if you're on Instagram, please make sure you check me out at Instagram, which is @WatchHobbyist. So just type in @WatchHobbyist, that's 2 H's in the middle, and you'll be able to see all my latest watches on there, and hopefully what's going to come onto the channel for review. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.